Now we have another keynote on advancements in semicon for AI and ML applications. For this, we have Mr. Sundara Ramalingam, and who is working as Global Director AI Consulting Partners at NVIDIA. Mr. Sundara Ramalingam has a very strong technical background, and his areas of interest include deep learning, big data analytics, IoT, and automotive solutions. He has more than 20 years of experience in solutions involving visual computing, AI, and high-end performance computing, high-performance computing. He has also exposure to work cultures of multiple countries in the Asia Pacific region. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Satish. Good afternoon, everyone. Just a quick sound check. Am I audible? Well, Satish, if you could please confirm.
Yes, you are audible, Mr. Ramalingam.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. Good afternoon. And thanks to AESA for inviting me over and asking me to deliver this talk. So this is the fourth AESA summit that I'm delivering a talk, and it always is a pleasure to deliver talks at AESA summit, because this is where you meet people from the same industry. Most of the people are from the same industry, so that's always exciting, and very happy to be here. All right. So the area of accelerated computing, or the area of high performance computing, has seen a lot of developments in the past several years. I would say about 7 to 8 years time. That's very commonplace knowledge. And particularly talking about data, the way data is getting handled also has changed drastically. Starting from the heuristic methodologies of working, which is nothing but your basic computer programming approach. In other words, if then else way of working. If this is the condition, this is the result, else this is the result. That has been there for long, it continues to be there, and it will continue to be there for long. And then comes machine learning, the traditional machine learning techniques. And then comes deep learning. So data analytics has changed a lot. Advanced data analytics has changed a lot thanks to the advent of the advancements in machine learning, and more importantly, the unprecedented advancements that have happened in the deep learning area. And one very important trend that is happening in the world today is that the demarcation between AI and high performance computing is slowly vanishing. If you imagine AI to be as one circle and high performance computing, a traditional high performance computing as the second circle, and there is an overlapping area between both the circles, the overlapping area keeps on growing a lot, and the distance between the centers of the circle is narrowing down. So that's a very, very important development that has happened in the past several years. And we are having this summit, and we are having this conversation here thanks to the big advancements that have happened in AI, machine learning, and deep learning. And overall, I would bucketize these developments under 3 major heads, which is data analytics, advanced data analytics, artificial intelligence, and simulation. Right? These are the big umbrella terms which I would use to explain this development. So there are 2 complexities involved here when managing these developments. The first complexity is the amount of data that gets handled. There is huge, unprecedented amounts of data. I really don't want to bore you by giving numbers. I think it's commonplace now. The knowledge is commonplace now. Data is getting spewed from anything and everything, and you need very, very powerful systems. You need the right semiconductor who can handle this enormity of data. The second one is the complexity of the models. The complexity of the models that have been handling data, that have been handling analytics, that has been handling AI, machine learning, etc., is growing in a big way, in an unprecedented way. Gone are the days when people are happy with the traditional CNNs and RNNs and LSTMs. Those days are gone. Now people are looking at more complex models, much deeper models, in order to get not only faster results, but also to get, more importantly, better results in terms of the accuracy. So all this needs a much reorganized, re-architected semicon to handle that, because the traditional way of computing is not going to work. That serial way of computing is not going to work. There's a limit to the Moore's law. So that is where GPUs kick in. And a very important introduction, which we did recently, like almost a year ago, is what we call as the NVIDIA Ampere architecture. This being an IESE summit, I decided to spend about 5 minutes on the hardware part of it, but let me caution you, I'm not going to spend too much time on the hardware. I'm going to very quickly move on to the software aspect, which is going to be very interesting. But I thought, I mean, it's the right forum to talk about the advancements in the semicon in the hardware also. And so I'm going to take about 5 minutes to introduce you to the new architecture called Ampere, which is an architecture which has totally been designed, totally been architected specifically for running AI applications, data analytics in a very, very optimized way. There are like many features. Obviously, I don't have time to cover all of them, but I'm going to touch upon the top 3 or 4 of them. Obviously, the world's largest 7 nanometer chipset with 54 billion transistors in that and supports HBM2 memory. And it also supports something called as a third generation tensor cores. I'm going to talk about it a little later. And support for sparsity at the hardware level, and an exciting feature called multi-instance GPUs, in addition to the big improvements in the way communication happens between GPUs to GPUs, what we call as a third generation NVLink. This is not the PCI Express based communication, because PCI Express is going to really shrink down the bandwidth of communication between GPUs, and that is not going to help when you want to scale your models across multiple GPUs. Intra-node, which is inside one node, or inter-node between multiple nodes. So the way connectivity happens between GPUs has also improved tremendously. Intra-node, what we call as NVLink and NVSwitch, which gives unprecedented speeds all the way up to 600 Gbps. Just as a comparison, PCI Express gives you 18 to 20 Gbps. 600 Gbps bandwidth, and inter-node happens through the Mellanox interconnect. As you know, Mellanox is now an NVIDIA company, and that also has helped these models to scale across GPUs, intra-node and inter-node. Now let's dive a little deeper into each of these features a bit. The first very exciting improvement in the Ampere architecture is what we call as the multi-instance GPU, which is MIG. So basically what you do is you take one GPU, which is a very, very powerful parallel processing engine. That's the key here. It's a parallel processing engine. The big difference, the topmost difference between the CPU and GPU is that a CPU computes serially, whereas the GPU computes in a parallel fashion. So those problems which are amenable for parallelization, which can be broken down into a very large number of small threads, and each of these threads can be run in parallel. Tens of thousands of such threads can be run in parallel, and at the end of the run, you can collate the results and look at it as a single result. That is what we call as parallelization. And these are very, very powerful, extraordinarily powerful computing engines. But then, have they been fully utilized? Maybe not, because depending upon the size of the problem that you're solving, depending upon whether you're doing training or inferencing, there could be headroom, a lot of headroom that is left behind the GPU, that being a very powerful engine. That is where this MIG comes into play, where one GPU can be partitioned into up to 7 instances. I mean, we call it as small instances. I mean, for practical purposes, you can imagine as a single as mini GPUs. So one GPU can go up to 7 mini GPUs, and each of these instances can run independent software ecosystems. For example, the first one runs TensorRT, the second one runs TensorFlow, third one runs TensorFlow, fourth one runs Jupyter, the last one runs Amber, and so on and so forth. So in one processor, you can have 7 independent software ecosystems running simultaneously, and you can have 8 such processors in one machine, which means 8 times 7, 56 independent software environments, and hence 56 independent users can simultaneously work in one system. These are all big improvements that have happened in the recent past. And another important development that happened is what we call as TF32, thanks to the tensor cores that I briefly mentioned about earlier. So TF expands to TensorFloat, which is a new data format that we have introduced. And basically what it does is it combines the range of FP32, floating point 32, which is full precision, and the precision of FP16, which is half precision. So the best of both the worlds, the range of FP32 and the precision of FP16 are combined together to give you unprecedented improvements when it comes to training performance. And then very important feature that is introduced, this really took the semicon world by storm, is that Sparsity acceleration is now a hardware feature. As we know, when you're working in deep learning, machine learning, etc., you deal with very large matrices, and most of these matrices tend to be sparse, being large matrices, and hence pulls down the solution cycle times. How do I solve this problem? Is what is addressed in the Ampere architecture, where sparsity as a feature is introduced at the hardware level, and just by switching on the sparsity flag, you will be able to double the performance of solving problems. To summarize, whether you're working with computer vision or speech recognition or text-to-speech or recommendation systems or very large NLP problems, natural language processing problems, all the features that I talked about is going to help you to get up to 6x improvement in performance when compared not to the CPU ecosystem, but when compared to just the previous generation GPU ecosystem itself, which was what called as the Volta generation GPUs. And so where do we house these systems? So these processors, the GPUs, I'm sorry. These processors obviously go into all the industry standard servers, like, the ones which are provided with HP, Dell, Cisco, etc. Additionally, there are also AI supercomputing systems that house these processors. One such is what we call as the DGX A100. And this is a workhorse. This is a workhorse. And I'm not going to go deeper into any of the hardware aspects, but just the performance numbers. Let me pick up this 5 petaflops of AA performance or 10 petaflops of int8 performance, which is typically used in inferencing workloads. So in order to get 5 petaflops of AA performance using traditional servers, traditional dual CPU servers, you need hundreds of them to be stacked, and clustered to get 5 petaflops of AA performance, peta floating point operations per second. That is now shrunk and provided to you on one system. Okay? That is what we call as accelerated computing. And when I say accelerated computing, let me try to quantify that a little bit. This is a practical example, one to which I myself got exposed. The defining data frames by one of the leading banks in India. What used to take, I think, about 7.5 days earlier came down to about 2 hours, thanks to the application of these type of systems, and of course the software which I'm going to talk about in a short while from now. So when I say accelerated computing, I don't mean how do I bring down 8 days to 4 days, or 8 days to 2 days, or 8 days to 1 day. That's not what I mean by accelerated computing. How do you bring down 8 days to a few hours? How do you bring down, let's say, 7 hours to a few minutes? That is what I mean by accelerated computing. And this is a need of the day. It is no longer a luxury, because as I mentioned earlier, AI is spreading so fast, and data, the amounts of data that we need to handle and the complexity of the models that we need to handle need such systems in order to practically deploy them in worldwide application and not restrict them to labs or academic institutions. And so the software ecosystem gets served to you in a GPU optimized format. We call it as NGC, NVIDIA GPU Cloud, ngc.nvidia.com, and a big list of software gets served to you, or which can run these on these systems in a very optimized way. Obviously, being very, very powerful systems, they need the support of very powerful software to run behind that, and that is what made available to you in the form of containerized environments from ngc.nvidia.com. Now, so much so on the hardware, I'm going to quickly switch over to a more interesting feature, more interesting chapter in my talk, which is the software. So all this is great. We know that deep learning is getting used everywhere, from internet and cloud to speech recognition, to language translation, medicine and biology, genomics, proteomics, media and entertainment, security and defense, safe cities, smart cities, and last but not the least, autonomous machines, self-driving cars, and robots, etc., etc. It is there everywhere. Fine. But then this is a very, very complex problem to solve. It is not an easy problem to solve, right? So there has to be a very robust and very refined software ecosystem that goes along with these GPUs, the parallel computing engines, to make it run the way it is supposed to run. And you'll be, I hope it doesn't come as a surprise to many of you, but then I'm sure at least a few of you will be surprised to know that NVIDIA has more software engineers than hardware engineers, because what we provide is a very complex but a very advanced and refined software ecosystem that makes these processors run the way it is supposed to run and deliver applications which can easily be, number one, trained, and number two, deployed for these type of applications to run. So how does the data center platform look like from a software perspective, right? Let me start from the bottom of the chart. At the bottom of the chart, obviously you have the hardware. We talked a little bit about it, which are the GPUs, which are parallel computing engines. On top of that lies our parallel computing software framework, which is called as CUDA, C-U-D-A, which is Compute Unified Device Architecture. So CUDA is our software framework for parallelization, right? And everything we do, the software parallelization is built on top of CUDA. So on top of that, we have what we call as the CUDA X libraries. X can be machine learning, it could be for deep learning, it could be for high performance computing, it could be for virtualization, it could be for accelerating data sciences, right? So these are all libraries which are built on top of CUDA, very specialized libraries, and they have their own specialized areas of application which will get used by the application developers, by the data scientists, data engineers, and others. On top of that lies the blue color layer, which is the applications of the framework layer. These are all like very commonplace names today: the TensorFlows and PyTorch and MXNet and Onyx and CNTK of the world, which are very powerful frameworks, application frameworks that are built on top of the libraries that are provided by NVIDIA, right? And these frameworks are optimized to run on GPUs, optimized to run on CUDA, and all the features that I mentioned about earlier, like support for mixed precision training, TF32, make the multi-instance GPU, etc. They are all supported by these modern frameworks. On top of that lies the application area, which is where most of the work happens. I would say a big majority of the work happens in this area, the topmost layer, which is developing applications on top of the framework, which runs on top of CUDA X libraries, which runs on top of the GPUs, which are parallel computing engines. And these software frameworks are so well defined and so refined and elegant today that application development is becoming easier and easier. So much so that our single focus is to ensure that the highly paid data engineers and data scientists don't spend their time on mundane tasks like building software environments, but they spend more time on defining their software applications which can be deployed for actual customer applications. And then comes a totally different ecosystem, which we call as the edge AI. After you have trained great models, could be deep learning, machine learning models in the data center, it doesn't have any sense until it is deployed, until it is deployed for inferencing in practical applications. And areas like security and surveillance, safety, smart cities, safe cities, retail applications, industrial AI, smart factories, healthcare, etc., etc. These all places where what we call as edge AI happens, where AI gets deployed at the edge on site. And once again, these need a lot of software ecosystem to go with that, right? And particularly with the advent of 5G plus AI plus cloud, right? 5G plus AI plus cloud. This is a killer combination. And this is going to change the way things are working in the near future, right? And so what are the areas where these software ecosystems thrive? So whatever you are seeing on the screen now, these are all specialized AI frameworks that are provided by NVIDIA, right? And these are end-to-end pipelines that address industry verticals, right? And these are all so elegantly built that any data scientist or a data engineer who works on top of these SDKs and libraries are served with customized vertical specific libraries and SDKs, so that it's quite easy, I would say, for them to deploy applications and frameworks that are specifically meant for their own applications. I'm going to call out some certain names here. And if any of you are working in any of these areas, please do go and try it out. The first is what we call as conversational AI. Conversational AI is a very, very difficult thing to achieve. When you say conversational AI, what I mean is it's contextualized conversational AI. It is not simply asking simple questions like, hey, what is the weather outside? What is the time now? Or what is the distance to the airport? No, that's not what is conversational AI. Conversational AI is contextualized multimodal conversations where things could be like, hey, I could point my finger towards one particular object in a store and ask, what is the price of that item? So this involves computer vision because the camera has to understand which object my finger is pointing towards so that it can give me the price of that item. And then NLP, because the content of my question has to be understood, and of course, speech has to be understood. So NLP plus speech plus computer vision. This is what is called as multimodal conversational AI. And this is a very complex thing to achieve. So we have a framework called Jarvis, which helps you to do that. And then comes recommendation systems. Okay, the e-commerce websites that we all go to uses huge amounts of AI, huge amounts of deep learning in particular. And Merlin is a framework for recommendation systems. And then we have something called as Maxine for video conferencing, dealing with streaming data at smaller bandwidths, at very low fidelity images. How do I still give an experience which is as good as meeting meeting people in person, which caters to multiple industries like healthcare, smart cities, autonomous vehicles. We have manufacturing, telco, 5G, etc., etc. And once again, industry vertical specific solutions are there. Clara, which is for healthcare. Metropolis is our software framework for smart city and retail. And NVIDIA Drive, which are autonomous vehicles framework. NVIDIA ISAC for manufacturing and smart factories. And NVIDIA Aerial for telco and 5G, right? So the software ecosystem has grown in an unprecedented way. And there are industry vertical specific software SDKs and libraries and end-to-end pipelines that accelerate things like recommendation systems and conversational AI, etc. They are all available. And all these are provided as a collection on NGC. Once again, NGC, which is very, very important, NVIDIA GPU Cloud, which is ngc.nvidia.com. I would invite all of you to go to ngc.nvidia.com and enjoy the very powerful software frameworks that are provided there. You have pre-trained models, you have public data sets that are available, you have demo scripts that are available. All these will help to make your life easier when it comes to developing applications based on machine learning, deep learning, and data sciences. Last but not the least, we also have a collection of libraries called Rapids, which basically accelerates your end-to-end data sciences pipeline. Defining data from ETL to defining data frames to running your machine learning or deep learning models to visualizing the results. It is all accelerated through Rapids. So the key here is that it is just not deep learning that gets accelerated through GPUs. It is the end-to-end data sciences pipeline from ETL to data frame definition to ML, to DL, to visualization. Everything is accelerated through the framework called Rapids. And now Spark, Apache Spark, I'm sure many of you are familiar with that and many of you might be working on that, is now GPU accelerated. So your Spark data frames are now GPU accelerated. And this is a very, very important development. So if you're using Spark 3.0 or have plans to migrate to Spark 3.0, please do go and check it out on ngc.nvidia.com and enjoy the benefits of accelerating on GPUs, right? So to summarize, we talked about a lot of developments on the semicon industry. We started off with talking about the developments on the hardware front, and then quickly moved on to the software developments. We talked about how there are industry-specific applications and applications and frameworks that accelerate end-to-end pipelines like conversational AI, recommendation systems, video conferencing, etc. What it actually means to the end user, that's important, right? I mean, technology gets its meaning only when it means something to the end user. The meaning is this: the cost of computation has gone down drastically, right? I repeat, the cost of computation has gone down drastically. What used to take, let's say, 350 dual CPU servers, right? Solving problems, 350 dual CPU servers, right? Which costed $23 million, which occupied 22 racks and consumed 300 kilowatts of power, can now be achieved at 1/7 of the cost. What used to be cost 23 million, the same performance is now available for 3.5 million. And obviously, less rack space and like 1/3 the power it consumes, right? So, thanks to the huge advancements in the semicon area, both in terms of the hardware and the wrapping software around it, and the software that envelops around these new parallel computing engines, the cost of computation has gone down drastically. And that is fueling the development of AI, machine learning, deep learning, because computation is becoming more and more affordable today in today's world. So more and more people are able to enjoy the benefits of this very advanced hardware, parallel computing hardware, and the software that goes with it. And more development happens, and more advancement, both in terms of research and practical deployment, happens in the exciting area of AI, machine learning, deep learning, and data sciences. That is the brief summary I wanted to give you, given the 25 minutes that I was given, and I'll be very happy to take questions if any.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Ramalingam. We have, a question from the audience. Is there any opportunity for the IC programming houses or secure programming in the microcontroller and memory devices, as there is a need for a data security?
See, data security, the answer is yes. The firm answer is yes. Whatever we talk about, once again, these are very powerful ones. They can handle everything so well. They can accelerate. They can give you better accuracies. All that is fine, provided it goes without saying, whatever you're doing is secure. If the data is not secure, if your models are not secure, nobody is going to use that. So the firm answer to your question is yes. The underlying fabric that connects everything is security, and security, if you're working on security, you have enough and more need for whatever I talked
about. Thanks a lot for the nice insights from your end. And thank you for your valuable time, spent to address this keynote to the audience. Thanks a lot, Mr. Sundar Ramalingam.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the summit. Yeah.
Thank you.